Chasing change isn't started by an action. It's preceded by a conscious decision. And what sparks that conscious decision? An idea. But what sparks the idea? A realization. Not long ago, we had the fortunate opportunity of visiting a farm with a group of friends. As a modern, working family, we have obligations, we have commitments, responsibilities. We hadn't been away in a really long time, and it was such a welcome break. And like many farms, basic infrastructure was in place, and the rest was accounted for by creativity naturally available to the area, and essentially some of the resources, mountain springs, etc. And as we were settling in on that second evening, without any disruptions, I'm referring to mobile signal, no TV, no internet, there wasn't even FM radio, we formulated this idea that by coming together, we could start a sustainable farming practice. I mean, just take a moment to picture this. You have this group of individuals. We vary in profession, in skill set. Our children are different ages. We earn different levels of salary. We even live in different geographical locations around the world. Yet, despite these varying backgrounds and experiences, we had this one thing in common. We all needed a change in how we lived our lives. And we wanted to essentially drop off the grid. Dropping off the grid means different things to different people. For some, it means taking a sabbatical. For others, it means physically disconnecting from modern-day conveniences. But what did it mean for us? And what did it mean for me? I've been a tech professional for most of my working career, and I've taken immense fulfillment, pride, and reward from helping people and businesses gear up for this fourth industrial revolution. Yet there was this part inside of me, and I believe this part inside many of us, that demanded a change in lifestyle. And we've all been there. We go on this idyllic breakaway, and as we're sipping our sundowners, we're staring into the firelight, we try and reimagine, how we can simplify our lives. We fantasize, shouldn't we just trade in this rat race? And then Monday comes, and we go back to our jobs, and back to our responsibilities and our commitments. And then it's months, maybe even years down the line, before we do that again. And Monday did come. We went back to those jobs and those commitments and those same responsibilities. But something inside us had changed. The conversation was kept alive. That week, we started making phone calls. We engaged in research. And it was amazing that this very opportunity we had when we looked at this ecosystem that was essentially demanding 24/7 connectivity, this very system that was distracting us from everything that we held dear, it was inadvertently helping us to start driving this change when it came to dropping off the grid. And when we bring these ideas together, we foster this sense of community, and you can just feel the energy, you can feel the enthusiasm when everybody just brings everything to the table. And we keep encountering these two kind of core concepts, as we progress through these steps and on this process. And that's of collaboration and learning. And you can feel that buzz. When we breach this topic to people as we start on this journey, we get a lot of interest. And we even get some people that are like, oh, we want to join in, sign us up, when can we join you? And it's kind of led us to that point where we realized, but maybe this is not such a nuts idea after all. And when we look from a learning perspective, and I'm looking at the change that I can impact in our children's lives, it's helping us drive this forward. When I've looked at the information that we've come across, what we've chosen, our choices, how we're going from building block to building block, there's some core realizations I've made, some key factors that we've started looking at. And essentially we've realized that we need to know our subject matter. And no matter how well you know it, realize you won't ever know it all. But at the very least, it's going to make that landing just a little bit softer when you do start. When we looked at our production methods, we opted for the production method of aquaponics, an almost ingenious system of sustainable farming, whereby water is pumped through a recycling system from fish tanks to your plant grow beds, consisting of an automatic flood and drain system. The plants remove the dissolved waste, what you would call nitrate and phosphate. They use it as plant fertilizers, but it's toxic to the fish. Remove it out of the water, absorb it, grow, and then return the clean water down to the fish tanks. And if you look at the input effort, what this requires, it's relatively low. We've come to discover that per tunnel we would only need one manager. From an electricity usage perspective, in South Africa, we're looking at about 1.6 kilowatt, heating 3.3 kilowatts, and that's only during our colder winter months. And it takes remarkably little space to erect a facility. And when we look at water, precious water consumption, 2,000 litres a week, half of that in winter, and all in all, 10% of what commercial traditional soil farming requires. Isn't that forward thinking? Housing was, of course, a very important consideration in a very underserviced area. Yes, to eco-friendly. And then we started going through the information, and we realized eco-friendly doesn't necessarily equate to lower cost and lower maintenance alternatives. In actual fact, the end product is actually pretty ordinary when we look at what is available. We ultimately want to drive towards something that is environmentally sustainable, utilization of natural heating mechanisms, insulation, and it's definitely the entire opposite of your designer-inspired eco-friendly living. Harnessing technology, on the other hand, and I know this is a kind of a conflicting topic, considering that we try to clear off the main line. However, we still have to mitigate our risk. We have to compensate for the fact that we've got such a little workforce. The majority of solutions out there in the market is geared at much larger farming enterprises. So what is a small holding farmer to do? Yes, there are niche section available out there that can accommodate a small holding farmer. Yes, it's feasible, but it's not really available, not in an underserviced area. So what are we to do? So we took a step back and we started looking at what is your older technologies, your old school technologies that is available out there that doesn't rely on this connected grid, which we could leverage off to essentially start engaging in precision farming. And we came to conclusions which included RFID, or better known as radio frequency identification. And when you pair that with near field communication, or NFC, in actual fact, if you look at your smartphone a little bit later on, when you scroll through the configuration settings, you'll actually notice you've got an NFC reader right on your phone. So reading that with low frequency, we could basically engage in a very clear form of precision farming. As I started delving deeper down this rabbit hole of what is mainstream schooling and what is cottage schooling, and I realized that I was so thrilled at this opportunity to be able to do that for my children. A method and a way for them to really pursue their interests in what they want to become one day, that didn't involve a one-size-fits-all factory model of what we've all come to know as schooling. I'm enthused by what is possible and what so few of us have been able to actually do in this lifetime. And it can be nothing sort of enriching for them to go on this journey. Ultimately, what we've looked at is these advances which the grid has supplied us with to effectively live off it. We want to make a conscious change to live alongside the grid, basically not being consumed by the noise. We are chasing change. Thank you.